One good day, algebra. We rarely have a Friday lesson, but this is just too much fun to save until Monday, so we're going to do it today. And what we're doing is a PO, and it's using function notation. And function notation is basically a way to identify an ordered pair in a relation. And remember that a relation is a table, it's a graph, it's an equation, it's any collection of ordered pairs. So to identify an ordered pair in a relation that we know is a function. Okay? Identify an ordered pair in a relation that we know is a function. Yesterday we kind of talked about how to identify if something is a function. Now we're being told it's a function because we're using function notation. Our goal today is going to be more identifying ordered pairs. Okay. Here's kind of an example of where you'll see function notation used. This didn't copy off so well on your page, but what this says here is f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay, so I recommend circling that, underlining that, or whatever, and writing what it says beside there. F of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. And this one here, it's a little bit easier to read, but it says g of x equals 2x minus 3. Okay? And so not only are we able to identify ordered pairs, but if I show you this, and I say, what is the y value when x is 3? And you're like, what are you talking about? I say, well, take a look at the graph. When x is 3, what is the y value? Well, which graph are you talking about? We have this parabola, this U-shaped thing, and we got a straight line here. Oh, the purple one. Well, my page is in black and white. What are you talking about? Well, function notation can help us identify on a coordinate plane which graph I'm referring to. Okay, this curved line, this parabola, is our f of x equation. And the straight line, the purple one there, is the g of x. So if I say, look at f of x, you know exactly what I'm referring to. Okay, we'll get to some more notation stuff here. But the other thing I want to point out is that this f of x is really just another name for the variable y. Okay, we could just as well say this equation is y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3, but using function notation, we replace that y with f of x. It's probably my agent. Maybe I finally got that big roll. We'll see. Nope, no, it's not. I'm always trying out for stuff. TV shows, commercials, musicals, sports teams. No, that's why I'm here. But someday, you never know. Okay, and then g of x is also just another name for the variable y. We just replaced it with g of x, a, because we're using function notation. It tells us this graph is a function, and b, it identifies which equation we're talking about on the coordinate plane. Okay, so important to remember here that when you see f of x or g of x, sometimes you'll see h of x, whatever it is, it's just another name for the variable y. Folks coming in, we're on PO18. Welcome. And you'll have to watch the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the notes so far. But here we go. Okay. How you'll use function notation to identify ordered pairs is you might hear the phrase find f of 2 when f of x equals 5x minus 4. Okay. Find f of 2 when f of x equals 5x minus 4. What that means is that you are going to plug in 2 for x to find y. Rather than me saying plug 2 into the f of x equation and solve for y, I can just say find f of 2. And in function notation, that means you're plugging in that number, in this case 2, for the x variable to find y. And again, this is why it's very helpful to remember that f of x is your y variable. Because if we rewrite this equation with 2 plugged in for x, y equals 5 times 2 minus 4. That 2 came from what I asked for here, right? Find f of 2. So 5 times 2 minus 4, what do we get? What is 5 times 2 minus 4? John?
6.
6. Okay? So y would equal 6. Okay? Questions on what we have so far? I'm going to scroll down so we can work on all this stuff. I'll kind of rewrite what we took here for the key point here, but any questions on just that f of x being the same thing as y, if that's not quite clicking, or anything? Okay. So to recap here, right, when it says find f of 2, when f of x equals 5x minus 4, what that means is we want to plug 2 in for x to solve for y, or to find y. So we had y equals 5x minus 4, which is 5 times 2 minus 4, and y is going to equal 6. So the happy pencil now. It says use f of x equals x squared minus 5 and g of x equals 12x plus 10 to find, our first one is f of 4. Which equation am I using? If I'm asking for f of 4, which equation am I going to be using? If you had to guess, I'm saying find f of 4. Will I be using f of x or g of x? If you've never participated in class before because you've been worried that you would get the wrong answer, this might be a question you want to put yourself out there for. Leah? F of x, right? That's what function notation does for us. It allows us to label or identify which equation we're using, okay? So if f of x equals x squared minus 5, which remember that f of x is simply y, and I'm asked to find f of 4, I'm going to be plugging in 4 for x and solving for y. 4 squared is 16, minus 5 gives us 11, so y would equal 11. The notation f of 4 means you're plugging 4 in for x in the f of x equation. And then this little note here, it says after solving, write the ordered pair. Since we were given a value for x and we solve for y, we can write that as an ordered pair, because an ordered pair is x, y, right? So our ordered pair for this one, when x is 4, y is 11. So what have we just done? We've identified an ordered pair for 11 that's part of that relation, y equals x squared minus 5. Okay, we know that that ordered pair is a solution to that equation. If we were to graph that equation, 411 would be a point on the graph. Let's look at -3, f of -3. Which equation am I using if I want to find f of -3? Lauren? Again, f of x, right? So f of x equals x squared minus 5, which is essentially y equals x squared minus 5. I'm plugging in -3 for x, and I'm squaring it. We just took a test on squaring negative numbers. When I put in this -3 here for x, am I going to need parentheses around it or not? Is that negative sign part of what's being squared or not? What do you think? Because remember, the difference is, without parentheses, you're just squaring the 3 and putting the sign on at the end, so that would be -9. With parentheses, it makes that negative sign part of the base. You're taking -3 times -3, that would equal +9. So you do get different answers if you use parentheses or not. We'll be using them here. If x is -3 and we're squaring x. We will be using parentheses here because if we're squaring the x value and x is negative, we're squaring that negative value. So that will give us +9, and then subtract 5 from that, y would equal 4. If you got -14, then you probably use a calculator and put that in there and got -9 minus 5. But it will be a +9 because that sign is included in it. So writing as an ordered pair, we were given x to be -3. We solved for y to be 4, and so our ordered pair is -3, 4. Okay. Let's go over to the third one, or the last one, just to save some space here. G of -8, which equation are we going to be using to find g of -8? Lauren? G of x, right? One of the advantages of function notation is that you're able to identify, label, if you've got multiple equations that you're working with, okay? Rather than saying, plug -8 into the second one, right? It's g of -8, you're using g of x. So g of x equals 12x plus 10. Again, that g of x just means y. And we've got 12 times -8. We're replacing that x variable with -8. And what do we get? What does y equal? No? We get -86. Okay? -96 plus 10 is -86. Okay. So for those of you who are lost, and we got a couple of you verbalizing it, some of you I can just see in your eyes here. Okay. There are two things that you need to know here. Number one is, what does something like that mean? Okay. This is a new notation. You haven't seen this before, right? So it's not like you were expected to know this coming in. But when you see that, g of 0, you look back at where we kind of talked about it, what does that mean? It means you're plugging, in this case 2, or in this case 0, in for x to find y. So part of it is knowing what you're being asked to do. And when you're dealing with function notation and it says g of 0, it means you're plugging that 0 in for x. Second thing is, which equation are you using? The fact that it's g of 0 means you're using the g of x equation, right? So g of x, and you're plugging in 0 for that x variable. And then you're solving. Okay? Writing out this relationship here is going to be helpful. Right? That g of x or f of x or whatever is just the y variable. If you're given x, you're solving for y. So, if you're stuck, where am I losing you? Oh, don't say everywhere. I mean, because if you... Morgan.
Where did you get 10 for the g of -8?
This 10 here?
Yeah.
So I looked up where it says use f of x and g of x, and since it's g of -8, I'm using my g of x equation, which is 12x plus 10. So the plus 10 came from the equation that we were told to use. Which one? From up above? No, that was for the graph. This is for this section, you're using these two equations here. So you're probably wondering where we got the -5 from too then, huh? When we did the f equation? Oh, okay. Yeah, the 10 comes from the equation we're being told to use for this particular section. Does that answer your question? Does that help? Okay. Jacob. For here, so negative 3 squared, negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9, and then 9 minus 5 gives me 4. If you're using a calculator, remember you need parentheses around that negative 3. If you don't put parentheses, you'll get a negative 14, but you need parentheses because you're squaring x, and x is negative. So you've got to include that sign with the squaring. Anything else?
How do you know if the parentheses around it?
If the negative sign was in our equation before the x squared, then the negative sign is part of the equation. It would not be part of what's being squared. But since the base of this power is x and x is negative, it means we're squaring the negative sign as well. It's something that as we get more practice with it, as you use it more, it'll click better. But that's the explanation. Other questions? Other places where you're getting lost? Okay. Because if there's a notation for me to give you the x value and solve for y, which is what we just did here, there's also a way for me to give you the y variable and have you solve for x. And that's what the second section is here. It says for f of x equals 2x plus 1, find x when f of x equals 9. When you see something like that, where it says find x, and what variable does f of x represent again? Up above it was f of x meant this, g of x meant this. What does that f of x mean? It means y. You could think about this. You can read this as find x when y equals 9. In this case, you would plug 9 in for y and solve for x. Okay? To me, it seems obvious that you're being given the y variable because it says find x. Why would I have you find x if I'm giving you x, right? If you're told to find x, that's the variable you don't know, which means you're being given y. It also helps, like I said, to know that this relationship there exists, right? That f of x and y are the same thing. Find x when y equals 9. So what we do is we substitute 9 for f of x, being our y variable. We're being given that, and we're solving for x. 9 equals 2x plus 1. Okay. What's our value for x? What value for x makes that equation true? 2 times what number plus 1 is 9? Connor? 4. Okay. X would equal 4. Right? So again, being a new notation, a new way to look at something, you kind of need to understand what it's saying. It's like when you study vocab for science or whatever, right? Here's this new word, this new phrase, this new whatever. What does it mean? Okay. The happy pencil says use f of x equals 6x plus 8 and g of x equals negative 10x plus 18 to find x when f of x equals 62. Because we know that f of x is another way to write y, this is telling us to find x when y equals 62. So which equation are we using? F of x or g of x? Lauren? F of x. Okay. So f of x equals 6x plus 8. We're being given our y value to find x, which means x is what we don't know. And now we have a two-step equation to solve. You should see how this is different from what we did up above. Up above, you plugged in for x and solved for y. Here you are plugging your given value in for y and solving for x. Two-step equation to solve here. Subtract 8 from both sides. We would get 54. equals 6x. Divide by 6, and we get an x value of 9. Things you're wondering.
Would the order of pairs be written like the other way around?
Good, yeah. So when we write the ordered pair here, an ordered pair always has to be xy. That's the order of it. So our x value is what we found, 9. Our y value is what we were given, 62. So the ordered pair to be 9, 62. Yeah.
Why do we have to take off 8?
Take off 8. We didn't take it off. We moved it to the left side. When we solved the two-step equation, opposite operations, we subtracted 8.
How is it 2-step equation?
Well, we have a coefficient, a variable, then a constant. Right? So we would start with that constant. We would move it over using opposite operations. So subtract 8 from both sides. On the right side, that cancels it out. 62 minus 8 is 54. And then here, divide both sides by 6 to get x by itself. And 54 divided by 6 is how we get 9. Some of you, I think, are so used to having your answer to an equation on the right side of the equal sign. Once you get to this step here, if you need to rewrite it to be 6x plus 8 equals 62, and now you know what to do, you can do that. I mean, these two things mean exactly the same. There's no difference in their meaning, but I think some of you are so comfortable, more comfortable with that 62 being on the right side of the equal sign rather than the left. If it was written like that, would you know how to solve it?
No, I just didn't know. I just saw it still said F2, but I didn't know F equals 62.
So do you know where I got the 62 from?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're using the f of x equation here. And so we have our 6x plus 8, right? And I've replaced f of x with 62. Okay. Let's do the next one. We're still using our f of x equation, right? Because it says find x when f of x equals 2. So I still have this 6x plus 8 here. But now, what does 6x plus 8 equal? 2. Okay? So this time, I'm solving the equation for x when y is 2. I'm still going to subtract 8 from both sides. Negative 6 equals 6x. I'm still going to be dividing both sides by 6. And this time I get x equal negative 1. Maggie,
That one looks different.
how does it look different?
Well, as it's talking.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't write this there. Right? Just replace that f of x with 2 because that's what you're told f of x equals. Okay? What would my ordered pair for this one be?
-1, 2.
-1, 2, right? Because x is -1, that's what we solve for. In an ordered pair, that always comes first. And our y value is 2, what we were given. Right? Other questions? Other things you are wondering? Yes?
On the G list, is the -10, is that in parentheses?
This is not in parentheses. There's no power here. There's no exponent. So we don't have to worry about parentheses there as far as squaring something. So for the G ones, this first one here is -62. You're right, then now we're going to shift to the G equation, right? Because it's G of x equals -62. So starting with that G of x equation, -10x plus 18, we're substituting -62 in for G of x. That's the equation that you'll be solving. There's no need for parentheses there. Okay. We are nearly out of time, so we're not going to get through the entirety of PO18, but for Monday, I would like you to finish just this first page. I think we have 1 left to do up in that middle section, 2.5 left to finish here. Okay, so for Monday, just finish up this first page of function notation. Pay attention to which equation you're using, right? Okay, and remember that f of x, g of x just equals y. Okay, that's our math, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe.